The first practice session of this week was probably the worst bad tone day that I have ever had, at least for the last long while. Prior to this bad tone day, I already had a week where I was getting back into my tone, and my tone was actually working out really well. Took the weekend off, came back on Monday, and it was like I didn't know how to play the flute anymore. I felt like I was playing the same way that I was just on the previous Friday, but everything was so resistant. Nothing wanted to come out. I couldn't even hold the upper end of my middle register stably. It felt a lot like when I was going through my embouchure change many years ago. It was really, really frustrating, particularly because I was doing this on stream. I don't hide any of the stuff that I go through in my practice sessions. It's all kind of there online. Yay. I spent the entire practice session, instead of working on the stuff that I was going to work on, I just worked on my tone. It is a little bit of a hit and miss when you have these kinds of bad tone days, because you're basically trying to figure out what is it that you are doing that you're not feeling. You see how that would be kind of shooting in the dark? How do you find out what you are feeling when you can't feel it? What is the difference between how you're playing on your bad tone day versus on your good tone days? I don't really know if I had the time and the energy to explain this while I was on stream, because I was so frustrated while on stream. So that's kind of why I wanted to make this follow-up video. What was going through my head was a checklist of all the things that I know that I have had problems with in the past. Prior to getting married, which was why I took a 2-month hiatus off of streaming, which meant that I took a 2-month hiatus off of practicing. I was working on my shoulder blades, my posture, because I noticed that I was playing with my shoulder blades kind of rolled forward, which is really bad for a number of reasons. One is that increases a lot of tension that you're holding in your neck and in your shoulders. Two, it causes you to cave your lungs inwards, so you can't actually breathe in or breathe out as much. And three, it tenses up your arms like nothing else. When you do this, it causes your triceps to tense up, which causes your forearms to tense up, which causes your wrist to tense up, which causes your fingers to tense up, which means that you can't play fast. That was what I was working on prior to my hiatus, and I thought to myself, maybe I'm going back to that, and that's contributing to my sound feeling really resistant. But no, I was fine. I was still playing pretty upright, actually more upright than I was, when I first started working on this issue months ago. At that point, I was like, okay, my checklist isn't working, which means that I need to just straight up observe my feelings. I felt like the top of my throat was sort of trying to grab onto the air. I almost felt like I was sort of swallowing my own airstream as it was coming out. It created this very kind of suppressed sound. So I was like, oh, that's really weird. How do I open that up? So I kept trying to tell myself, okay, loosen up your throat, loosen up your throat, loosen up your throat. It didn't really work, because the more I told myself to loosen up my throat, the more I actually constricted it. It's like saying, don't think of an elephant. You're automatically thinking of an elephant. So I was like, okay, that's not working. Let's see what else is happening. So I thought maybe my embouchure was too tight or something. So I tried loosening up my embouchure. My lips are also not working very well today. So as you can tell, I can't prop up that higher B. I couldn't move it. That was when I was like, okay, this is really weird. The fact that you can't move your embouchure means that something else is going on. And that's how I realized that my jaw was completely locked into place. Okay, I just made a discovery. I'm like locking my jaw like this. It was almost like grinding upwards. Essentially, all of the tension that I used to have in my shoulders and in my neck, because I guess I had practiced it so hard to keep that stuff relaxed, I think it just ended up being siphoned into my jaw, which is why I had no flexibility whatsoever. That's why I was cracking my middle register notes. That's why I couldn't get any of my high notes out. And also my tone itself sounded like it was cut in half. And as soon as I dropped my jaw, it was like suddenly my tone came back. Yeah. And I was like, whoa! But it took all of my mind to force myself to drop my jaw. I started to experiment with that a little bit more, and then I figured out that by dropping my jaw, that also relaxed the top of my throat. So I stopped kind of grasping at the airstream with my throat. But I found myself often clenching back again. Yes, you can loosen up one part of your body, but that doesn't mean that the tension goes away. The tension has to go somewhere. Now I had to think of two things. The first thing was dropping the jaw, but also siphoning all that tension into my core, which is really hard when you feel like your tone just doesn't want to come through that day. Essentially, you feel like your flute is resisting you, when in fact, it's your body that's resisting you. With how insanely tense I knew that I was thinking to myself, oh shoot, this is probably going to be a multi-day thing. Guys, if you ever have bad tone days, don't put the pressure on yourself to go right back to normal the next day. Depending on how tense you are, it may take a few days to actually relax it down to go back to your good tone. On top of dropping the jaw, what ended up happening was I would drop my whole embouchure as well. So I had to then separate my embouchure from my jaw, as weird as that sounds. My embouchure was correct, but I wasn't dropping the jaw inside. So then that was like a third thing that I had to think about. So I'm thinking of these three things together at the same time, basically one at a time as I'm discovering them. By the end of the session, I was really kind of starting to get it. The hour was up though. I had to go and teach or something like that. Came back to it the next day, was much better. But the new problem was that I still had some leftover tension. It wasn't fully gone. I noticed that I was doing this. Uncontrollable shaking. That's how much tension I was holding there. Did the same thing, coached myself to drop my jaw, keep my embouchure, and siphon down the tension into my core. And it was a lot easier because it wasn't locked, it was just kind of shaking. Come Wednesday, it was like I was back to normal. I just wanted to share this experience with you guys because I'm starting to realize that this may be one of the reasons why some people have issues with volume on the flute. You feel like even though you're pushing a lot, you're not actually getting a lot of sound out. If I were you, I would look into what your jaw is doing, because it could be that your jaw is sort of locked into one place and it's not dropped enough to allow for that much air to pass through. And also with your jaw locked like that, it'll cause the top of your throat to kind of grasp at your airstream and sort of swallow it. That's the suppressed sound that I hear in some of my students. And so I've started to go around telling them to start paying attention to their jaw. I thought this would be helpful to share with you guys that, yeah, I have bad tone days and they're documented on Twitch if you want to go and see. And sometimes you might catch it live. While it's happening, it's super frustrating. But honestly, it has opened my eyes to what might be happening with my students and also what might be happening to you guys, because I know that sometimes I get comments from you guys asking about like how do you do dynamics and stuff like that on the flute when you feel like you can't really control it. I've known about this, but like it was such a non-issue for a long time that I kind of forgot about it. I remember my teachers talking about dropping my jaw and stuff like that, but that became my new normal and I just kind of forgot that that was even a thing until my jaw locked into one position on Monday. By the way, guys, I'll get to doing those exams sometime. I just didn't really feel like doing it this week. Procrastinating. I'm the queen at that. I love you all very much. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.